All right. Today, we're going to kind of go off of where we left off yesterday. Yesterday, we watched that episode of America, the Story of Us. You kind of got to see some early British colonization in the New World. You got to see a little bit about why we end up rebelling and fighting in the American Revolution. Today, we'll look at a little bit more detail of the causes and effects of that. There are going to be some causes and effects charts that you're going to be doing in your notebook today, but those notes are not a part of the notebook check on Friday. They're going to be for our next notebook check, which will be quite a ways away. But it should be pretty easy. Part of it we'll do together, part of it you will be doing on your own. So that's kind of where we're at today. More on that here in a second, but let's just kind of go over our basic announcements, and we'll go right back to notebook check number two. Notebook check number two, it is due on Friday. The final thing that you need in that notebook check is from right before the break, from December the, what does that say, 16th. The Enlightenment Philosophers Chart goes all the way back to December the 7th. I only need those notes. Okay, I don't want stuff from a long time ago. Just give me that stuff. Okay, that's all I need. But that is due on Friday. That is going to be due by 11:59 p.m. on Friday. That is a daily grade, but as you know, this averages together with your first notebook check for your final test grade. So if you didn't turn in your first notebook check, what I did to kind of, a lot of fire under your butt is I went ahead and gave you a zero for the test grade version. Now, that doesn't mean it's really going to be a zero. It shouldn't be a zero. But that is kind of like the worst case scenario. I mean, if I put in a zero for the test grade, it means you didn't turn in the first one. And if you don't turn in the second one, obviously that's what your grade's going to be. Doesn't have to be that. You can still turn in your first notebook check, even though it's really, really late. And obviously, your second notebook check, that's not due until Friday. But if you notice that your grade went down significantly, that is probably one of the reasons why. The main point I'm trying to make, though, is this notebook, guys. It is so important. It's the grade there at the very end every 6 weeks. That if you just keep up with your notes, it should help you out. Sometimes it can even save you. But if you have fallen behind and you're not taking your notes and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, it is something that can really kill your grade. So make sure that you get this in. Obviously, if you haven't turned in your first notebook check, you need to get that in as well. Another thing that can help out is the extra credit documentary review. I put up the extra credit review and the notebook check in Canvas, the link for you to turn these things in. So anytime between now and obviously 11:59 on Friday, you can get those in. They'll be on time, and hopefully we can even get these grades done a little bit early. So if you've already got your notes for the notebook check, get it in, which, if you've been keeping up with it, theoretically, you should already have. Final thing, grade wise, yesterday we did watch the video. We did the video quiz. I thought it was pretty easy if you paid attention. That is technically not due until tonight at 11:59. If you already turned it in, nothing to worry about. I'm going to start grading those probably tomorrow. But if you have not turned it in yet, please, too easy to get a zero on. Please get that in as soon as possible. Other thing we need to talk about is semester exams. Kind of what we're doing this week. Today, we'll go over the American Revolution chart together. You're gonna do some reading. You're gonna do some independent work on two revolutions that were inspired by the American Revolution: the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. Tomorrow we'll talk pretty much just about France. Thursday we'll talk pretty much just about Haiti. And then Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, really, we're going to be doing some exam review stuff. You will have an exam review that'll probably be up in the next day or so if you want to get started on early. But we will be, just kind of spending Friday, Monday, and Tuesday getting you ready for the semester exam. Semester exam obviously does have a pretty large impact on your grade. But if you pay attention during the review process, I think you're going to be fine. This really isn't that bad. You need to kind of know when you're taking each exam. For those of you in person, this will be pretty straightforward. When you show up, we'll give it to you. But the people online, from my understanding, you have to take your exam on the assigned day at the assigned time. If that changes, and I'm mainly talking to people online, I'll let you know. But yeah, you got to take it whenever it is assigned. And on this one, whereas we've taken all of our exams in Canvas, this one probably be like most of your other classes, we are going to take that directly in Aware. And I'll go over how to sign in and how to access that a little bit later, probably in the week or early next week. So here is your exam schedule. If you want to take a picture, you can. I've got the at least days on the board. For each of your exams, you're going to have 75 minutes to get it done. Our exam's something funky. I want to say it's like 47 questions or something crazy like that. But still with 75 minutes, that should be plenty of time. So this period, our class, we are going to take it on Wednesday, first thing in the morning. Then later in the day, you will have your exam in 8th period as well. The next day, on Thursday, you're going to have your exam in 2nd, 6th, and 7th period. Again, 75 minutes for each exam. Every once in a while, they'll give you an extra 2 minutes. It's just weird, but that's how it worked out. And then on Friday, all you have is 3rd, 4th, and 5th period. And then it's a half day. You get out at 1:05, which is pretty nice. So know the days that you're supposed to take these exams, prepare, study, for each exam accordingly. I imagine in some of these classes on days that they're taking tests that you won't be testing that period. They'll probably give you some time to study. I don't know. We'll just have to see. But that is kind of what's coming up. But again, especially for you online guys, you got to take the exam the day that you're supposed to, the class period that you're supposed to, the time that you're supposed to. Make sure you make that a point of emphasis. So today we're going to be starting, and this is in Canvas, this very, very brief PowerPoint over the Atlantic revolutions. Starting with the American Revolution, 1776, you start to see a wave of political revolutions throughout the world, especially in colonized territories in the New World. We fight against the British, one of the most powerful empires in the world at the time. We are actually successful, which is pretty darn amazing. We break away, we rebel, we get our independence, we form a brand new country, the United States of America. And we base a lot of what our government's going to be on those principles of the Enlightenment we discussed before. Well, that inspires other people to do the same. Soon after, you have a revolution, an internal revolution in France, where people are fighting for a lot of the same principles of the Enlightenment that we did. And it turns out kind of weird. We'll get to the French Revolution tomorrow, but the point is they were striving for something better. The results are debatable. After that, in a French colony, Haiti, you see a rebellion, the formation of an independent nation. That's going to be our first political revolution in Latin America, but it will not be the last. You're going to see various areas in Central America, South America, of course, Mexico rebel and form countries of their own. But it all goes back to the American Revolution, the example that we set, the things that we at least tried to implement, and the fact that other revolutions soon followed. We call these the Atlantic revolutions because most of the areas that revolted, a lot of the areas in Latin America, Haiti, obviously, what will be the United States and France, they all kind of border the Atlantic. So if you hear the term Atlantic revolutions, we're talking about this time period, 1700s into the 1800s, political revolutions, largely based on the ideals of the Enlightenment. Now, you don't have to copy these terms down, because these should theoretically be in your notebook already. They were part of the Age of Isms vocab on December the 15th. But these are some terms today that I'm going to mention that you also may come about in your reading. That's nice to kind of know a little bit of background. They're terms that are still used to this day. The first, nationalism. A feeling of intense loyalty to others who share one's language and culture, or an extreme form of patriotism. This is a time period of a lot of new countries being born. This is a time period, a lot of old regimes, struggling to hold on to their authority. There's an intense, kind of increase in national pride for the good, sometimes for the bad. Nationalism is going to be a force in world history that we continue to see to this day. This is really the time period, though, that loyalty to one's country, to one's nation, to one's, culture and ethnicity and everything really kind of comes to the forefront. The next two are terms you've heard before. They're used a lot today in American politics and in politics in general. This is a little bit different, but the foundation's the same. We have conservatism and liberalism. But I put classical conservatism and classical liberalism because some of the characteristics of each have changed a little bit over the years. Today in modern politics, at least in the United States, we think conservatism, conservatives. We think, mainly like Republican type ideals. And you hear the term liberal, and you're usually thinking kind of what Democrats are typically all about. Some of that's still the same, but just know some of these ideas have changed over the years. This is more conservatism and liberalism in the context of this time period, 1700s to 1800s. So when you read about conservatism today and in the next week or two, what we're referring to is advocates for maintaining traditional institutions of established monarchies, religious privileges, and systems of social stratification. These are conservatives in the sense they like the way that things have been. This is the European nations that want to keep their colonies. These are the people in largely European nations that want to keep their kings in power, want their kings to still claim divine right. They want the social hierarchy that they've always had to essentially remain the same. So here for conservatives, think traditionalists. They like the way things have been. They want to keep the status quo. To some extent, that's similar to modern conservatism, but it's not the exact same. So just keep that in mind. Similarly, we have classical liberalism. When we say liberals in this context, these are the people that want change. They want increased freedoms. They want more representative government. These are the people that ultimately in the colonies want countries of their own. So classical liberalism, good little definition. They have a firm belief in natural rights, constitutional government, laissez-faire economics. Remember, that's where the government kind of keeps its hands off the economy. Free trade and less spending on standing armies and established churches. Some of this stuff is still true of liberals today, but again, when we're referring to conservatism and liberalism at this point in time, think about it back then. Think about it in the context of this time period of revolutions. Today, you are going to create 3 separate kind of cause and effect charts. This is an assignment, I guess you could say, for your notebook. But just keep in mind, these notes are not going to be a part of this upcoming notebook check on Friday. They're going to be down the line, okay? I'm giving you the one on the American Revolution. I'm going to briefly discuss some of the main causes, some of the main effects. This is not everything, but these are some of the things that you probably want to know. You, afterwards, are going to do a little bit of reading. You're going to create similar charts over both the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. When you do your own, the exact amount of causes and effects, I'm not putting a minimum or a maximum on it. I'm mainly trying to see what you get from the reading. What do you see there that you believe caused these revolutions? What do you see there that would be a lasting effect? So let's talk about the American Revolution, which, we don't declare independence till 1776, but Lexington and Concord, that's 1775, goes all the way to 1783. So essentially an 8-year war of independence. What are the causes? First, the Enlightenment. Guys, the Enlightenment is going to be referenced as a cause for most of the political revolutions that you're going to see moving forward, at least in the 17 and 1800s. Remember, these were philosophers that really wanted those guaranteed natural rights, wanted representative government, wanted, things to change. We talked about how Thomas Jefferson, referenced a lot of that in the Declaration of Independence. Later on, we'll look at the Declaration, some of our other historical documents, but, you're going to see a lot of those ideals embedded in them. Next, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the Enlightenment, you've got the competing ideologies of mercantilism and capitalism. Capitalism is where the people and businesses have a lot of economic freedom. They decide what to buy, what to sell. They decide what the prices are. They base those decisions on supply and demand, competition, stuff like that. We'll get more into capitalism later on. That's what a lot of the people in the colonies, in the 13 colonies, really were advocating for. They wanted more autonomy in their business. The problem is there were colonies of Great Britain, and Great Britain was still operating under mercantilism, where essentially they saw the colonies there as just a tool to be exploited, a tool to make them money. Mercantilism is a lot of government oversight. They decide what's bought and sold, and they help to set prices, and they basically just meddle a lot in economic affairs, whereas capitalism, the government under pure capitalism, pretty much stays out of the economy. So you had that, kind of conflict. Different ways that people saw of running the economy. Businessmen, wealthy, powerful businessmen in the colonies, a lot of our founding fathers, frankly, wanted more economic freedom, whereas the British government, they were looking to make money off of us. Next, and we really don't get into this that much, the 7 Years' War. You guys have heard of the French and Indian War, correct? Okay. Where Great Britain is fighting over here in North America against the French and largely a lot of Native American allies over land claims. Well, the French and Indian War was a part of a much larger global conflict, mainly between France and England, although other people were involved, called the 7 Years' War. Now, this is somewhat of a cause of the American Revolution because even though the British win, now they're kind of cash strapped. Now they need more money, including money from their colonies. It's one of the reasons they start jacking up taxes. But also, they start restricting the colonies and the colonist movements more. One of the things that really sets things off is the Proclamation of 1763, which I have under provocations, which basically was a mandate from the British Crown that American colonists could not move west of the Appalachians. And the whole reason is, even though that is territory that the British won from the French in the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War, they didn't want to provoke Native Americans. Okay, they didn't want to have to send any more soldiers over. This is one of the many things that started to tick colonists off. Biggest thing, though, that you need to know is the idea of no taxation without representation. Our founding fathers did not want to have to pay taxes to the British government, which was thousands of miles away, without any sort of advocacy or say in British Parliament. They wanted somebody over there to speak on their behalf. They felt that they were not being adequately represented by the British government. And they said, hey, if we have no say, no input on government decisions, and we're way over here doing us anyway, we shouldn't have to pay these taxes. So as the British government needs more money, they start jacking up taxes. When you were in 8th grade, you probably read about like the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, things like that, the Townshend Acts. Those were all meant to get more money for the British. Problem is, people started to resent that. They protested. They boycotted British goods. And it was kind of this back and forth for years of just provocations. The British government was upset that, colonists were not paying their taxes, that they were breaking laws. So they passed the Quartering Act, which basically required colonists to house British soldiers here in the colonies. Later on, there's that confrontation you saw in the video yesterday, resulting in the Boston Massacre. Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead. Boston Massacre. Who knows how it really started? There's different points of view. But we see the British, fire on unarmed colonists. And then, Paul Revere, as you saw yesterday, he has that headline, he has that famous engraving, he calls it a massacre. That is meant to tick people off. You've got the Boston Tea Party, where colonists dump like $1 million worth of British tea into Boston Harbor, a very valuable import, that was making money for the British. You've got the First Continental Congress. We saw that yesterday, where leaders of these colonies start to meet together to at least start thinking, hey, maybe we got to do something. They start forming militias. Some of them want to break away right then. Some of them don't, but they're at least preparing. Then you get the battles of Lexington and Concord that we saw in the video. Shortly thereafter, this very popular pamphlet comes out, written by a man named Thomas Paine, called Common Sense. which in short basically said it's common sense that we gain nothing from this relationship, that yeah, we should rebel, yeah, we should start to do our own thing. And this finally is capped off with the Declaration of Independence, where Thomas Jefferson and others really referencing a lot of Enlightenment ideals as to why we need to rebel, as to why we need an independent nation of our own. So those are some of the key causes. They're not everything, but it would be nice for you to be able to reference a few of these specific things if you ever had to do anything over this, like on an SAQ or something of that sorts. So effects, and these are really broad, really brief. Obviously, you get a new nation, a new country, America, the United States of America. And we attempt to form a democratic republic in which, you know, people elect representatives to speak on their behalf. That's what a republic is, a representative government. Democracy, you know, being much broader, just saying, you know, power ultimately comes from the people. We tried this under the Articles of Confederation. That was weak. Eventually, you know, we get the Constitution, we get the Bill of Rights, which really kind of solidify how our government's going to function and what our guaranteed freedoms are. You see in our country and in others a rise of those things that we talked about earlier: nationalism, conservatism, liberalism. And probably the biggest thing for us, for world history, is you see other people follow suit. Other people say, hey, these 13 colonies, they rebelled. They managed to defeat what was then considered to be one of the most powerful, wealthy empires in the world, the British, and they succeeded. And they formed a new country. And they actually tried to put some of those Enlightenment principles into play. Other countries say, hey, maybe we could do the same. In France, people are upset with the king, and there's a bunch of other issues, taxes and whatnot. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But you know, you start to see people rebel. There's an internal revolution that causes all sorts of problems. Later on in Haiti, you know, you see largely enslaved Africans rebel, launching the most successful slave rebellion in history, ultimately forming a nation of their own. Then other places in Latin America, which we won't get to the Latin American ones other than Haiti until later, but they start to follow suit. Again, think of this as a domino effect. We do it. It works. You could debate on how successful things have been if we really, you know, implemented all the things that we wanted to, but we inspired other people to do the same, other people to try to form more democratic governments to varying degrees of success. And obviously, political revolutions, by their very nature, they're going to have a big impact on world history. So that's the gist of the American Revolution. You do need to have these notes down. Now it's your turn. Now we're going to be talking about these next two together a little bit tomorrow, a little bit on Thursday. But today, what I would like you to do is you're going to try to create, or at least start on creating, you'll have a little bit of time to finish this up tomorrow, similar charts for both the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. To complete these, you're going to use the OG, the old AMSCO book. First, for the French Revolution, you're going to read page 399 to 403. Then for the Haitian Revolution, it's pretty short, 403 to 404. I want you to list out as many causes and as many effects as you can see. Now, everybody's probably going to look a little bit different. You're going to have to use your best judgment for what you think a cause, what you think an effect is. The main thing is just reading this information and thinking about it. Yes, you need to have a chart over each one of these for your future notebook check, not the one on Friday, but your future one here in a few weeks. But, you know, the exact amount of causes and effects, as long as I see a good effort, you're going to be fine. You're going to use the file, if I can see, right here, the Unit 5, Chapter 21 through 24. Now, you're going to have to scroll a little bit. Use the page numbers I have in the PowerPoint, because I put this whole unit here, and there's a lot. But this is the first chapter, Chapter 21. You can skip through a lot of this because you've already read through similar material. You are going to start your reading at the French Revolution. And again, it's about 3 or 4 pages. And then you're going to read through the Haitian Revolution. And also kind of read the comparing the Haitian and French revolutions. Again, try to create 2 good charts in addition to what you already have. One for the French Revolution, one for the Haitian Revolution. List as many causes and effects as you can. You'll have the rest of the day today. I'll try to give you 15-ish minutes tomorrow to kind of start to wrap up at least the French one. And then over the next 2 days, we will discuss both and hopefully kind of add to your chart. And then on Friday, we're just starting the semester exam review. So that is the game plan for the remainder of the day. And I think you're going to see some at least somewhat similar issues kind of caused all these revolutions. Any questions of what the rest of class looks like? We don't have a whole lot of time, about 25 minutes, but that should be enough time to at least get a good amount of this done. All right, go ahead and get to it. Like I said, you will have some time to work on this tomorrow as well, but as much as you can get done today, you should try to get done. I will tell you, the French Revolution is a little complicated. Read through it, do the best you can. Again, we will try to clarify some things starting towards the end of class. And if you need anything, let me know.